All right. Well, hey everyone. Hi. Well, you're my favorite face. Even I can't say that, publicly, but it is where I spend the majority of my time at Orange is thinking about what's happening here with 252 Kids and 252 Basics. So I wanted to first, what we're doing here, because I know that you are just starting this and just starting to get a taste of what this is and what it could be. And so I want to, Mike might jump in and help a little bit, but we just want to give you like an overview and like help you understand why we do what we do and what we do and how it all fits together. So does that sound like a really good plan? All right. So it's called 252 for a reason. And you may know this. I don't know how much you know or don't know, so I'm just going to keep going. So when our boss, Reggie Joyner, started working with North Point Ministries, and he helped Andy Stanley start that church, he said, if I could create a curriculum, I want to create a kids curriculum that speaks to how Jesus learned. And we don't have much to go on with how Jesus learned, except one little story in the book of Luke. And you know this story where his parents can't find him on their way home, and they go back and they find him in his father's house. And there's a verse that concludes that moment that says, "And Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature, and in favor with God and favor with man." And Reggie thought, wow, man, if I could have like three big things that I want a kid to know, it would absolutely be wisdom, faith in God, and good relationships with others, right? So we've broken that down into three basic truths of I can trust God no matter what. I should treat others the way I want to be treated. That's favor with man, favor with God. And then I need to make the wise choice. I'm going to grow in wisdom. And so everything that we do, every lesson that we create speaks to one of those three big ideas. And these ideas are actually seen in something that Jesus said when he was asked, what is the great commandment? And you probably know this, that Jesus says, well, it's to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And Jesus here is talking about three different loves, right? He's talking about this love for God made evident by how we love others in light of how we love ourselves. Now that's kind of weird to say that I love myself, but the way we like to talk about that is that we have this like proper view of who we are in light of who God is. And so all of these different things, like this month, I don't know, do you have January in front of you? Mm-hmm. Okay. We're about 8 months out, so I had to jog my memory of what this is, but it's commitment. We're talking about work it out. And this idea of commitment next month, kindness, right? The month previous was generosity, thank you. All of these are not just words, they're not just virtues, but these, we believe, we call them life apps. And these are a reflection or a response to the character of God as seen through Jesus and seen through the canon of Scripture. That if I'm going to be the image of God, am I going to teach a child how to be the image of God on planet Earth, that I need to help them understand, well, who am I the image of? Who am I replicating? Who am I mirroring because I don't look like God in my persona, but how I love and how I give and how I show compassion and how I have joy regardless of the circumstances. One of those is they're either a reflection or a response to who God is. And we see these in the life of Christ, and we also see these in the life of all of these real humans that lived on planet Earth and interacted with God and wrote down these truths. And so that is really why we do what we do, because we want kids, all kids, both inside and outside of the church, to have a better future where they can trust God, they can have good relationships, and And they can have they can make wise choices and discover who they are in light of who God is. So that's what we do. And honestly, Orange, we're not a curriculum company. Like, yes, we create 4 different curriculums, but we are at our core a strategy company. And I'll say this about that. It's your strategy, not your mission, that will ultimately determine your success. See, as a church, you probably have a mission statement. Like, for the church that I attend, it is that all people would have a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. That is our mission, which is really, really great. You know, we can pop it on a wall, we can be like, yeah, that is our mission. But if we don't have a plan to help make that happen, it's just words on a wall. And so what we decided was like, hey, we have this idea that we want all these kids to have an authentic faith where they know who Jesus is and they love him and they trust him and that they understand who God is and what God can do in their lives. We said, hey, we have a curriculum that helps implement that mission as part of this strategy. Because here's the thing. You can't force kids to have a relationship with Jesus Christ. I grew up in the most Christian environment ever. I do not know a generation of my family who did not know Jesus. Like, I come from a legacy of faith. I went to a Christian school. My dad was pastoral staff. My mom was in the choir. My grandfather was the chairman of every single board ever. I went to Christian school for all my years. And I went to school with people who ended up walking away from their relationship with Jesus Christ. They knew all the things. They knew all of the head content. They got A's on all the Bible tests. Yet there are a handful of us that still believe and still have a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. Because you can't force it. You can only create an environment that will make it a little bit easier. And that is what we hope to do at Orange. We hope to help you create an environment where kids want to keep coming back week after week. And we'll build foundation after foundation and truth upon truth that will ultimately, hopefully, lead them to a place where that faith is no longer the faith of their parents or their grandparents or their aunts or their uncles. It is their faith, where they have made a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. We can create weekly environments where kids trust God's character and live out God's story. And we think that 252 helps churches do just that. We think First Look does that, and XP3 does that. But today, right now, we're talking about 252. And every curriculum that we use is kind of broken up into 7 different segments. So we're going to take a look at those and see how they all fit together. So the first one is the prelude. This is setting the tone for the experience. Setting the tone for the experience. I don't know, how many of you have ever been to Disney World? Been to Disney World? Yeah, okay. So you walk into the Magic Kingdom. This is Disney World, right? This isn't Disneyland. I'm in the right place. Mike Clear lives in California, and he's at Disneyland. That is his place of happiness. You walk into Walt Disney World, and you don't even have to step foot inside the Magic Kingdom. You are just stepping foot like off the boat when you like at the dock, and you are like, oh, this is going to be amazing. Like, you immediately are hit with, this is a great environment. This is a place I want to be and I want to spend my time. And we think that there are things that you can do in your environment, that churches can do in their environment to one degree or another, that can help set the tone for what kids are about to experience. And we call that the prelude. This could be the music that you play, this could be the signage, these could be any different number of things, but this is why every month has a theme. So if you look at this next slide, these are some ideas of how people, we did a series on stewardship back in October. Mike is shaking his head. I know I'm correct now. And it was sort of this game show theme. Since we were talking about, how we use our money and our talents and our time wisely, we thought, let's do like a game show kind of thing. Like, that'd be super fun. So we're going to call it Use It or Lose It. Because if you don't lose your gift, you may lose your gift. And so this is how some churches decided to decorate based on that theme. And this theme actually serves a purpose for how kids think. Did you know that when you walk into a room, like when I walked into this room earlier this evening for the first time, my brain was taking a giant scan of everything. It just does it. That's just what the brain does. It's what the eyes do. They take a look around. And I was like, oh, this is cool. We did the same thing in our Kidsman environment. We took out all the things, painted everything black, made it like really cool and like so it disappeared. Those lights those will be cool. Oh, they have stage lighting. Oh, they have this. Oh, there's things on the wall. Oh, I want to go check it out. I want to go see what's happening. Okay, now, then the next time that I walked in here, my brain still scanned. But immediately was like, oh, nothing's changed. You don't have to really pay any attention anymore because you know that everything's there. And then think about the fifth time I walked in here, and I'm like I literally don't even care anymore because my brain doesn't care anymore. It's not that I don't have an emotional attachment to it. My brain's just like, you're good, you're really good. So sometimes when kids aren't paying attention and kids are quote unquote bored, it's their fault, and sometimes it's ours. And there are things that we can do in our environment to cue their brain that, hey, it's time to keep learning. You haven't learned everything you need to learn yet. Pay attention. And that's why we create sets. That's why we create a theme that's super graphic heavy every single month. And that is, it's a brain rule. And it helps kids connect. What this also does, my personal one-word job description is the word relevant. And see, that doesn't mean like bells and whistles and lights and fog and sound and cool music. No, what relevant means is that I'm taking an ancient truth and I'm helping it relate to a modern world. And this is what these sorts of graphics can do. Because they can see, oh, like stewardship just isn't this thing that people talked about in the Bible. Stewardship is something we need to care about right now in 2018. Same with like commitment and working it out. And like I'm really excited about the one in March, jump ball, because of March Madness. So especially those 5th grade boys that are like, oh yeah, college basketball is like, it's crazy right now. I love March Madness. Well, hey, we're talking about peace. Why don't we do something where like, there's a competition and like, oh, jump ball. Yeah, because it's basketball. They're already thinking about basketball. So let's make that part of our curriculum. And so you can do that at Christmas time. We can do that at Easter. We can do that. Even the way that we scheduled our October, November, December series, it went from stewardship to, help me, I forgot the word. Service. What? No. Yeah. Stewardship, service. This is what I have. What do I have? What can I do with it? Who can I do it for? Generosity. So they sort of like built on each other as you were like thematically, because that is what you're thinking about. You're thinking about your giving projects. You're thinking about who you're serving. And so that is all part of that environment and all that prelude stuff. Next, we have social. And social is providing time for fun and interaction. And social is where we get into your curriculum. This is the first small group activity that happens the way that we write this. Is that this is like when kids are walking into the room. And are they hit with like just a row of chairs and like nothing, or are they hit with fun? Because let's be honest, fun is the currency of children. Fun earns you the next 5 minutes of attention. And what you do with those 5 minutes earns you the next 5 minutes. And the way kids have fun isn't necessarily the way you have fun or I have fun. And so when we're writing these are written with kids in mind. And they may be out of some comfort zones, but we think it's worth it for kids to want to keep coming. See, because here's the thing. A kid may never believe in a God who loves them if they don't see adults who love them. And they may not believe you love them if you don't like them. And they may not know you like them if you don't play with them. Think about this. At some point, a kid knows that mom, dad, aunt, grandma, they have to love me. They're like my family. You have to love me, you're my small group leader. But they are beginning to realize that not everyone likes them. They're beginning to realize that they don't like everyone. And church should never be a place where kids question whether someone likes them or not. And this is why we create social. Because it gives them a chance to have fun with their peers and fun with a leader who is speaking truth into their life, who will eventually speak truth in your life. And you earn that right, that moment of speaking truth, by first showing that you like them, and you care about them, and you want them to be there. And that's why we create those social environments. The next segment is called transitions. And transitions are moving smoothly from one thing to the next thing. That is why in the social, there's like a tagline at the bottom of the last activity that's like, and now we're going to go to large group where we're going to learn da 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 da. Or we're going to, like, so it's teased. Like, it's like this transition that's like teased to the next thing. So it all fits together. Because those kindergartners, those first graders, they need some help navigating life, right? Because they're just like, like they'll just walk down the hall. Like, they'll just keep going. They're like, no, okay, this is what we're going to do next. We're going to go to large group, and this is what's going to happen there. And now you're setting them all at ease. You're letting, especially some of those kids who are like super anxious about being here, and you get to spell out like, here's where we're going, here's what we're doing. Those transitions are super important. Because our environments can be distracting if we haven't spent the time to make sure we transition and help kids navigate through our programming. I love that your large group space has some lighting, because lighting is a great transition. Because it helps kids focus where they need to focus. It can darken back here, the lights can come up on stage here, so when there's a communicator, they know that they should speak, that they should pay attention to the speaker. Next is worship. And worship is in the large group section. If you want to go there. In there, it's called story. But worship is sort of in there because the host segment of large group acts as a transition. It helps them really get involved and like that. We'll talk about that a little bit with story, but I wanted to talk about music first with worship. Worship is really important. And it's about inviting people to respond to God. And we said people for a reason, because we don't just want kids singing and having fun with the music. We want everyone in the room to be singing and having fun with the music. We want them to enjoy worshiping God because worship helps kids see what's true about God. I connect personally to God through music. I'm a musician at heart, and I love that. What I love most about that is that I get to speak things that I wouldn't otherwise say. But I speak, what a beautiful name that is. What a beautiful name is the name of Jesus. What a powerful name. Yes, that is a truth that I need to say over and over again. And I can say that in the context of a song. And we get to help kids learn those things that are true about God, true about Jesus by the songs that they sing. Worship also lets kids see other adults respond to God. It's really great if they see their parents respond to God. It's really great for them to see lots of people respond to God. And they can do that with music that they like, that is chosen for them, not just in big church, where they're hearing songs that are really chosen for mom and dad. And so having a worship experience just for kids allows them to see that worship is something that they can do and not just something that parents do. Worship also lets kids sing and move. You get the wiggles out. You need to get the wiggles out. Right? It just helps them like, let's see. Okay, now we can calm down. All right, so let's go into story. Story is communicating God's truth in engaging ways. I'm a large group guy. I studied theater. I studied education. I'm a storyteller at heart. I love large group. This is where I spend a lot of my energy at Orange, leading that team of writers and creators with the large group communicators. And what we want to do is we want to help kids engage with God's word. And so we will sometimes have stories, like Bible stories, and we will sometimes have principles. Because a lot of the Bible is not told in a narrative form. It's told as blurbs and principles. And kids, adults, everyone learns best in the context of story. That is a scientific fact. Think of the way Jesus taught truths about the kingdom of God. If you want to say, God loves us no matter what and is willing to forgive us, yeah, he said that. But he also told the story of the prodigal son. And all of a sudden, people were able to make an emotional connection to God as Father, God as forgiver, God as one who loves me regardless of the things that I've done. I come to him and he accepts me and he's running. He's there with open arms. And what Jesus was doing was he was taking these cultural moments and he was helping people understand truths about God in a relevant way to their culture. Faith like this mustard seed. I can say that to a kid. They don't know what a mustard seed is. You've never seen a mustard plant. So I'm going to need to make that real in their life. So I'm going to need to figure out, okay, well, how, we pig farmer, I don't know, I live in the city, like no one's ever seen a pig farmer. Okay, well, what if I take this story of the prodigal son and put a modern twist on it? Because the biblical truth is still there, what Jesus was talking about, that there is a God who loves us, he is like our Father. And I can give them this truth, but I can also package it in a way that is truly relevant to this child's life. Like if Jesus was telling the story today, maybe instead of working on a pig, you would do this. And so when we take these principles, these proverbs, or these truths rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. We can talk about Paul being in prison and all of that, but we can also give them a context into which that scripture resonates with their life now. Because one of the things that I firmly believe is that a Bible story isn't over until a child knows what to do with it. Because we can force feed biblical content into their heads all day long. And they can know all the things and know all the facts, and yet it never transfers into a changed life. Because kids, we talked about this in the phase talk, kids mentally, until they are 11, 12, 13 years old, cannot on their own make the connection of why this thing over here impacts this thing over here. So unless I explain, being joyful no matter what means, let's say your dad loses his job and you are at home, and so now I'm giving them a context into which that story will make sense, so then they can say, oh yeah, when my friend at school, this thing happened to her, they were in a car accident, or, oh yeah, and she had this outlook on life that was just so great, and you knew that she was a follower of Jesus. You have to give them that first connection so they can help make the connections after that. But stories do lots of things. Stories help us see. They help us see things about God. They help us see things about ourselves. They help us see things about others. Stories help us care. They make us care. All of a sudden, when the host comes up after the Bible story and starts to unpack why the Bible story matters, and tells this anecdote of this moment, all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, that's my friend at school. She never knows who to sit with at lunch because she eats at a lunch when there's really no one really sits with her. So yeah, I bet I could go sit with her. It makes us care in a different way. The stories give us hope. This is why we make a big deal about Easter, right? When we tell that story, and we're gonna talk about Jesus a lot, because that story gives us hope, a future, that we have a future with God forever. We have a hope. So those are what they do. Now I'm going to skip a few things and go to groups, right? Thank you. All right. So there's a lot I could say about large group. I could literally talk about it all night, but we have other things that we need to talk about. I will say this. The purpose of large group, at the end of the day, is to set up kids for a great time in small group. We want to tell the story in a way that kids can understand what the story was about, what the verse, the context of the verse. So they head to small groups, and they have a safe place to connect, and can now build upon what they learned with people who are going to help guide them through that. And this is what groups are about. Because here's the thing. You can have a video host, you can have a video storyteller, but you cannot have a small group leader on video. It doesn't work. This is why you're here. Because you have a unique opportunity to invest in a group of kids and help lead them into a growing relationship with Jesus and help them build an authentic faith that's theirs. You are building the solid foundation upon which the rest of their faith development will be built. And so, how are groups helping them remember the story? Our small groups curriculum has a few types of activities. And it does this in a few different ways. And so we always have a Bible story review, or like a verse review if it's just a principle, which is sometimes based more on the application, but it's definitely there. There's a Bible story review where they kind of go over the details of the Bible story. Then there is an application activity. There's usually 2 of those where they are connecting what and how the Bible impacts their day in and day out life. Like if a kid needs to be able to see how what they learned on Sunday impacts what happens on Wednesday. Because your faith doesn't live here at church. An authentic faith is something that happens every single day of the week. And that is why application activities matter. And yes, they're fun. Yes, they're going to laugh and they're going to seem silly. But remember, fun is the currency of a child. And if they're having fun, they're learning. And so that's why we do those things. And then there's going to be a memory verse activity. We include 1 memory verse a month. And this was something that we wrestled with. But we said, based on attendance patterns, if I have a memory verse every single week, not every kid is going to get every single memory verse. And in fact, they may not even learn every single memory verse. And if they do learn it, they're learning it for short-term memory just to like put the sticker on the wall. I mean, that was my personal upbringing. I did that. I learned it to get the sticker to get the prize at the end of the month. I remember those verses. I mean, maybe I do, but I went to seminary, so it's different. But if they could learn 1 verse, and really know it, and be able to know why that verse matters, and be able to say, oh, when I'm going through this, I can remember this verse, we've won. Because if at the end of the year they know 12 verses, that is better than knowing 1 kind of verse. Or 10 kind of I know this. But I just sort of said it. It's like in there, but kind of. It's in this short-term like weird thing up here, not like really here. Because what we do with 1 verse is we get it from head knowledge to heart knowledge. That it's no longer just this thing that I have in my head, but it's something I understand, it's something I know. It's something I believe for myself. And then there's a prayer activity. We want kids to interact with God. And those prayer activities are not just going to look like, okay, what are your prayer requests? Let's pray for them. Some of those prayer activities will be more experiential. Some of them will be call and response. Some of them will be popcorn prayers. There will be different ways that we go about doing that. Because the truth is, as adults, we each connect with God differently. So like where I connect with God with music, my wife connects with God while she's outside and she's walking around our neighborhood and she's enjoying nature. And those are very different things. But this is who we, like, as we've talked about that, this has been who we've been forever. Jenna's always like, oh man, when I lived in Colorado and I would just walk out my backyard in the mountains, like, I just saw God. And I think that's where I started to connect with God as a child outside. And so we need to be able to give kids those sorts of opportunities where they can experience living out their faith in ways that actually connect with them, not just the way we connect with God and think that they should connect with God. So I'm glad you have the PDFs, because there are these stamps at the top of the page, right below that.
Yes.
There's that circle. See that circle? Right there. Yeah. There's a stamp, and that's going to tell you what learning style that hits and what type of activity that hits. So some of them are movement, some of them are thinking, some of them are relational, some of them are artistic or creative or musical, some of them are prayer activities. So those give you sort of a clue as to, oh, this is going to be active, so I'm just going to need some space in order to do this activity. It gives you a heads up. We do that on purpose because, like how we connect with God differently, we all learn differently. And the majority of kids in the United States, just based on what we know about how they go to school, they are not auditory learners only. In fact, the fewest amount of people in the world are auditory learners, which means that you're gaining what I'm going to say. Like, I can just say something and you'll remember it forever. Like 10% of the population is like that. And so we just can't talk at kids. Most of them are visual or kinesthetic learners. And so visual, that's pictures. Kinesthetic, that's movement. And it could be writing. Like drawing and art can be a kinesthetic activity. It can also be a visual activity. So anytime that you can have an activity that kind of combines different learning styles, you actually learn it 30 to 50% more than just one learning style alone. Which is why some of these sort of mix, but we default to like the major one on the page. The small groups are super important. My fifth grader, when she's in sixth grade now, but when she was in fifth grade, and she was sort of in those preteen years, I mean, she's really still a preteen, she's 12. The reason she kept coming back to church was because of her small group. And we dragged her there. But no, she was over large group. She's like, it's basically all the same, right? But I love my small group leader. She sends me postcards. She came to my art exhibit. She showed up here. She, checked in on my test on Sunday. She, I knew that she was praying for me. You matter. And how you position all of these activities and the spirit you bring to the activities rubs off on how they experience those activities. There are some activities, and I help create it, where I'm like, oh, I just don't connect with this. But I bet that there's a kid who does. I bet there's a kid out there that absolutely is going to connect with this activity because that kid is different than I am. And so these are things like, okay, so this is a great question. Thank you for moving on. I have to keep moving. What are you doing to help them connect the bottom line with their life in a way that makes it stick? That bottom line, that one thing, we teach one thing each week. One thing. Because that is all a brain can handle. If I can get you to know one thing, one solid bottom line, we've won. Because, like, if I am trying to teach a kid, I don't know, about Nehemiah, let's say, but I also think that I should tell them about Jesus, and I should, I have to get from Nehemiah to Jesus now. And there's about 10 steps. So I'm not teaching one thing anymore. I'm teaching 10 things in order to get to this. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the one thing, and then in the next section, which is home, prompting action in the home and community, we have God time cards and parent cue cards that are an extension of, not an addition to, what the kids are learning. So the extension would be that Jesus moment maybe is happening in that home piece. Because we want to teach one thing on Sunday so a kid really knows what they learned and knows why it's important. And know that Nehemiah followed God's call on his life. I can follow God's call on my life. And we can do that through Jesus. And that maybe is great, right? And then at home, we take them to different places. So our home pieces, we have parent cue cards, which I see some of those. Yes, that is the God time card. That is the parent cue card. Can you hold that up? I believe that's the monthly. Is that the monthly one? Yeah. So parents can get that, and it gives you what you're going to learn all 4 weeks of the month. And then it also, on the back, gives you some ideas of how to implement that during the rhythm of a child's life. Did you talk about that last night? Okay, so there's meal times. So here's the thing. All of that is based on Deuteronomy chapter 6, where it becomes this rhythm of a family's life. So I'm not giving you something extra to do and an extra time that you need to create with your kids. I'm giving you something to do while you're already with your kids, hopefully. Drive time, meal time, hang time, the rhythm of a family's life. There's also God time cards, and that was, you just held one of those up. Yeah. This one, yes, thank you. That is the preteen one, I believe, right?
Yeah. Or fourth grade.
Yeah, fourth and fifth grade, yeah. So this is the preteen one. These, we have one for each phase of a child's life. So the kindergarten and first grade one looks very different. Someone have a kindergarten and first grade one where it looks like a coloring page on one side, and then there's something that they can do with a parent or a trusted adult on the other side. The second and third grade one, that is that one. It's a little bit more developmentally challenging. It's not just a coloring page. Remember, we're looking at the phase of what a child can do at each stage of their life and what they can handle. So that takes it and is an extension of different verses. And then the preteen one, we're really excited about this, is we have 4 faith skills that we talk about at Orange, and that's hear, pray, talk, live. Hearing is how we navigate Scripture, how we hear from God as we read His Word. We have pray, which is prayer, and how we talk to God. And then we have talk, which is how we articulate our faith, both in how we talk to people about having a relationship with Jesus, but also just how we talk about what God is doing in our lives with other believers, and how that is a faith practice of being able to articulate what God is doing in our lives. And then the last one is live, which is our word for what it means to worship with your life. That worship is more than singing loud, but it's living loud. And each of the days of the God time card for preteens helps them see how they can practice their faith of hear, pray, talk, live in regards to what they just learned on Sunday. So it's an extension of what they learned. And there are only 4 days because we know that they are not going to they may do 2 of those. But if they get all 7 days, they maybe won't do any of those because they'll just be completely overwhelmed by it. So we are trying to understand where the kids are at and what they can do with what time they have and where they are developmentally. Did you want to?
I'm right to the end. Keep going.
Okay, cool. No, I mean, honestly, I've pretty much wrapped up. Like, that is 252 in a nutshell. And again, like you can't force the relationship. We can create the environment to help that happen. So yes.
This on paper, is it also available on the internet?
It was in preschool, like they emailed us the stuff.
Yes, it is. They're PDFs, they're Word documents. It's downloaded off the computer. There is a Lead Small app.
Okay, I got that. That's the little orange thing.
Yeah, and that would have the small group activities. It doesn't have all the.
That little orange dot thing.
I think so. That looks like it.
Yeah,
Yellow?
Lead Small.
Yeah, so that's the Lead Small app. So if you put in your age group, you would get the different activities for that week.
Okay. We're going to log in somewhere so it knows where we are and stuff.
Maybe. I'm sorry, I haven't used it in a while.
I think we're going to send you all an email too that also has the link. That's what Bruce just said.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah.
That Bruce is also. We're also going to send you all the link that has the app in it. It has the app. Yeah.
So we got the app, but be able to get into it. I think we got the app, but it's just the key.
All right, and then my next question is like, do the parents have something that they can use, or do we give this to the kid like a printout?
You can give it to the kid as a printout. There is studio252.tv that a parent can log in at any time, and they can download those things, right? Those things are still there, Mike? And also, the Parent Q app.
No, I don't know about that.
Okay, so I talked about that in my talk.
I don't think that's gone out in the blast yet.
Okay, great. Okay, great. So the Parent Q app, the way that works is I put in my kids and their age.
Yeah.
And what it does as a parent for me is it prompts me with what the content loads Sunday evening for what they just learned. So it's not what they're going to learn, it's what they just learned. And it gives them like that question. It gives them the video so they can watch it at home.
Okay, good.
It has a parent, like a link to a parent piece as well. That was that thing I showed with like my son and how many weeks
Yeah,
were
how
left.
many weeks left.
Yeah, so if I keep scrolling up, there's content related to what he just learned on Sunday
Okay.
that I can then talk about with him throughout.
I think that's more of what parents are going to look at.
Right.
We love it. I love it because that like especially with my elementary son, we can be like, hey, let's watch this video together, and then we can talk about it together. And yeah,
Because I worked with a Boy Scout troop for 7 years, and no matter what you give them, it never makes it to the parents. And they're not driving.
That's true.
It's just, it never goes
No,
home.
I know, true. I know. We do feel like we have to try.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean,
but yes, we do have ways for parents to own that process.
yeah, that's something I'd want to push our parents to do in our
Yeah,
class.
for sure. That makes sense. Yeah.
That'll be good. I can do
Yeah.
that.
Go.
Fantastic.